first couple of weeks in college football, as well as talking about some predictions on the NCAA playoffs, I believe. And after that, we're going to end it with NFL, but I'm going to give a little brief segue into some baseball, but that's going to be after college football. But we'll be right back. I am C-Moo.
I'm D-Mo.
We are Sports Moods. That's 2 Moodys.
1 duty.
Sports. Back. We are Sports Moods, and we have been talking about everything from WWE to tennis, and now we're going to get on some good old college football. And we're going to talk a little bit about what happened in the college football world, as well as give some playoff predictions on the teams we feel is going to make it to the final, all the way to the end. I guess the finals of college football, but I mean the playoffs to the championship game. I mean, it's kind of early considering this is just the official first week, but that's what predictions are for. So
first off, before we get into our picks, we'll kind of recap what took place last week. The biggest game on the schedule last week, we had some really good games. We had Michigan versus Florida. Michigan won that game. That was a matchup with 2 ranked teams going at it. But the biggest matchup of last week was Alabama versus Florida State. Yeah. And that, I mean, it like on paper, that's a national championship caliber match that you could see. I mean, you got 2 of the best coaches in college football right now, and for FSU, Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban for Alabama. Those 2 guys know each other very well. They used to work together, as coaches together. So they know each other very well. The game wasn't that great to me, but I mean, it's a typical Alabama game. It's not going to be a lot of highlight reels, right, and a lot of fancy, finesse type stuff. It's hard smash mouth type football. And that's what we saw. Jalen Hurts going to his second year as a quarterback. I mean, to me, they win in spite of him. He does some okay things. To me, he still has a lot of developing to do as their quarterback. I actually like Francois better than Jalen Hurts for Florida State. And it is unfortunate that he got hurt at the end of that game. In the first half of that game, Florida State kind of stuck with Alabama there. Pretty close. It was a low-scoring game. It wasn't really a lot of big plays that took place, but it was a tight game until what I call the apple turnovers took place. And Florida State began to turn the football over, and then when you do that versus Alabama, you kind of play into their hands, into their scheme of how Nick Saban does things. Alabama really didn't do a lot to take advantage of a lot of those turnovers, but it did really change field position when they did score. It really helped them put points on the board. So big thing is that Bama did get the win. It was unfortunate again that we had Francois get injured at the end of that game. Before I had my college playoff picked out, I did have Florida State there. Now, given the fact that he's hurting out, that really changes a lot of things for me. What do you think?
Honestly, man, like I said, it's always sad to see somebody get injured. I mean, especially being the first game of the season. But I will have to say that I didn't like Francois' performance leading towards his injury. Like, I feel like a couple of those turnovers, of course, the interceptions I felt were due to the fact that he literally eyed down his receivers, which, I mean, it's pretty much easy pickings if you're a good defender to read the eyes. Mm-hmm. And I didn't like that about his game. I don't know, is it just the pressure of playing Alabama or whatever it was that was going through his mind, but I just didn't like his performance leading to his injury. And maybe what I was saying once he got hurt, I was like, this could be which, once again, I'm going to say it again, this is a Tom Brady story for somebody. Maybe the backup quarterback is... No, it's not going to happen. Like, in my mind, I was like, this might be the year that the backup quarterback actually takes over FSU and puts them at least higher than what's expected without Francois. I don't... Like you said, now that they're injured, I don't expect them to be in the playoffs. But I do see them getting further than expected if this quarterback comes and shows out, which they would desperately need, because I feel like Florida State does have pretty much everything, all their components they need to be a top-tier team, but now they're lacking a quarterback. So if he can't fill that, then they're definitely going to be a great caliber team in the long run this season.
And this, like, a lot of times when you get people that go down with injuries and stuff, it gives you an opportunity, like you said, to see what you have.
Right.
And then, as a backup at any position, you got to be ready to step in and take over, and this could be your shining moment. But, I mean, Alabama, they really laid a lot of big hits on him in the game. The offensive line really didn't do a great job protecting Francois, even when he did complete a lot of tough passes. But he still paid the price for a lot of them by taking the beating back there, throwing the football. But Bama did get the win. So that was one of the big marquee matchups of week one of the college football season. We saw Ohio State kind of struggle in the first half against Indiana. And then the second half, they kind of got things going as they pulled away from them. And then Clemson won their matchup. So the 3 of the 4 teams that were there in the playoff last year are all winning their first. All the teams that were in the playoff last year, I think we had Bama, Ohio State, Clemson, and Washington. All those teams won. So we're going to kind of get into the top 10 right now as it stands today. Florida State did drop down 7 spots. They were number 3 to start the season. Mm-hmm. And that loss to Alabama dropped them down, still in the top 10. But they're down 7 spots from last week. And then we got Wisconsin. They stayed the same. They stayed at number 9. They did get their first win of the season. At number 8, we had Michigan cracking the top 10, moving up from number 11 to number 8. So we do think, they're going to be in the conversation a lot this year with Jim Harbaugh and what he's doing at Michigan. That Big Ten conference, the 2 big giants over there is Michigan and Ohio State. So we got to see how that's going to play out as the year goes along. And again, as we said, Washington is still undefeated. They were kind of a surprise team last year that made the playoff last year. A lot of people didn't expect them to be there.
That's what I was thinking.
So you got to wonder if that's going to continue this year, but they're in the top 10. USC had a strong finish to their season last year. That USC Penn State game last year was amazing. I don't know if you got to see it last year.
I don't remember.
But it was great. Like, if you ever can go back and watch it, that was a really good football game.
Okay.
But they actually dropped 2 spots because they kind of struggled with their opponent to open up the season. I think it was Western Michigan they struggled with a little bit. They did get the win, but they kind of struggled the first half with them, and then they pulled away late. They gave up 31 points to them, so that's probably why they dropped them down a couple spots. Number 5 is Oklahoma. They're in their first season without their long-tenured head coach, Bob Stoops, who retired, stepped down, whatever, the end of last year. So now they're building a new program from the ground up. They have a huge matchup coming up this week versus Ohio State. But they're cracking the top 5, moving up from number 7 to number 5. Penn State's at 4. Clemson is at 3, the defending national champions. And then we got Ohio State still at 2, and Big Bad Bama at 1.
Yeah.
So that rounds out your top 10. Some of the big matchups from this week, Simo can kind of look at that for me and kind of tell you guys what to look for in some of the big matchups right here for the week coming up.
So for the week coming up, we have Clemson against Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
That's a number 3 team against number 13. I kind of like Auburn. I mean, not trying to predict this game already. Mm-hmm. I do feel as though Clemson is pretty much the same as far as like having all their components being the same structured team. And I probably would still see Clemson win this one. But I just feel like I like what Auburn is growing into.
Mm-hmm.
Another big matchup would be Stanford, number 14, versus number 6, USC, which...
Pac-12 action going on there. That's going to be a really tough game. That's a tough game early in the season, too. And then given the way USC looked last week versus Western Michigan, you would think a little peon school under them,
right,
kind of pushing them a little bit.
And I was going to say, because of that, that kind of struggle, I do see kind of Stanford taking this game. Another one would be Georgia, number 13, versus number 24, Notre Dame. And I really like Notre Dame. I can honestly say I've liked how they've looked these past few years. Like, I know they aren't really like big picture teams, but I just feel like it's something about Notre Dame. Like, I feel like they're on the rise. Like, I don't necessarily mean that in saying that they're going to be in any major pictures, but I feel like 24 they're going to get higher than that. Like, that's just something to throw on them to start the year off, and their performance will get them in a higher picture for that. For our hometown people, we got South Carolina versus Mizzou.
Yeah,
Missouri.
Yeah, I call them Missouri. They say Mizzou. That's an SEC matchup. Carolina is not ranked right now. They did barely hold on to beat NC State last week. It came down to the final play of the game. They had to have a goal line stand to win that game. I expect them to have a pretty decent season to go to a bowl game. I'm not expecting anything great from South Carolina this year. I think they're still trying to rebuild after the whole Spurrier leaving situation. So we'll see how they do versus Missouri this week. But the big matchup of the week is going to be the top 5 matchup between the Oklahoma Sooners and the Ohio State Buckeyes. Oklahoma looked pretty good in their game last week. Ohio State struggled a little bit in that first half. J.T. Barrett took him a while to really get things going with offense-wise. But they did find a way to really pull it out. I'm pretty sure Urban Meyer is going to have this team ready for this big showdown with Oklahoma. He seems to always win these big caliber games, against other ranked opponents and other big name schools. So everywhere Urban Meyer has been, he's been successful. So we all remember the days of when Tim Tebow was at Florida. They won those championships there. And he's done well at Ohio State as well. So that's going to be the big marquee matchup. I think Ohio State will win that game to stay undefeated. I think Clemson wins their matchup. I think Auburn is pretty tricky, though. They gave them some trouble last year. I'm pulling upset with Stanford over USC. And then I think Notre Dame is building towards something. But I'm going to go with Georgia with the upset here.
Okay.
And I think Missouri will beat South Carolina. I hate to go against the home state there, but I just don't really see any. It got, some promise, but I just don't really see. Maybe Carolina is having an up and down year. I think they'll get to a bowl game, and that's about it.
Okay.
So that's just some college football there, but we're going to go into who we think is our playoff predictions for college football. And I'll let Simo tell you guys who he thinks will be the Final Four at the end of the year.
Okay. Yeah, it's better for me to start first because I feel like he'll have more knowledge and purpose of his choices than what I will, than what I'm going to give you right now. But I feel like I kind of got some valid people Now, I will say that, of course, two, I kind of have to stay in the top three. I do have Alabama and Ohio State being in the playoff picture. I just don't see them falling down right now. Not only, do I feel like they still have they're fully functional as a team, but just their coaching structure is still going to maintain